According to the Holy Scriptures, all current peoples are descendants of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This also applies to black people and other ethnic groups with dark skin, whose Hamite lineage originates from Ham, one of Noah's sons. Ham is the brother of Shem and Japheth, who respectively represent the Semitic peoples, i.e. Arabs, Jews, Syrians, and the Japhethites, i.e. Europeans and Asians. The term Hamites originally referred to people descended from Ham, one of Noah's sons, according to the Bible. According to the book of Genesis, after the flood, Noah and his three sons were charged with continuing the lineage of Adam and his descendants. With just 8 people, Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their 3 daughters-in-law, humanity needed to start over. Ham, son of Noah, is recognized as the ancestor of African and black peoples. In the Bible, his name was always associated with Africa. In fact, the book of Psalms places him as the ancestor of the ancient Egyptians. It is interesting to note that in antiquity, ancient tales of the Jewish people and other ancient traditions always identified Ham as the ancestor of African peoples. Furthermore, all interpretations of Ham's children point to African countries and regions. It is curious that the name Ham itself, in Hebrew, Aramaic, and other ancient languages, means burned or dark in reference to the skin tone of his descendants. In chapter 10 of the book of Genesis, between verses 6 and 14, it is possible to obtain more information about the lineage of Ham, and also about the Hamite peoples. The text presents Ham's descendants, Cush, father of several African peoples, and Mizraim, father of the ancient Egyptians. It is important to mention that Arabs, Jews, Syrians, and other peoples refer to Egypt as Mizraim in reference to its originator. Other sons of Ham are Put, also known as Phut, and Canaan, who is the father of the Canaanites, not the Africans. It is essential to understand that Canaan represents a distinct region and people. The sons of Cush include Havilah, Sabta, Rama, Sheba, and Nimrod. At the beginning of his reign, Babel and other cities were part of his domain. Nimrod, who was an ancestor of the native peoples of ancient Babylon, the Sumerians, left for Syria, where he founded 2 or 3 cities. Furthermore, Mizraim was the ancestor of Ludim, who are North African peoples such as the Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Patrusites, and Casluhites. From these descended the Philistines and Caphtorites. Ham's firstborn son, Cush, gave rise to many nations and peoples, including the people of Ethiopia. All Ethiopians are descended from Cush, as are the people of Nubia, also known in antiquity as the Kingdom of Cush. These are the main nations and peoples spawned by Cush, son of Ham. They are not limited to Cush and Nubia, including the Kingdom of Cush, the Kingdom of Nubia, and the ancient Sumerians. Nimrod, rebellious son of Cush, is considered the ancestor of the people of Sumer. Furthermore, the peoples of South India, including those native to the region, are believed to be of Cush's descent, as are many other Africans, such as Malayans, Eritreans, Kenyans, Congolese, and Bantus from Gabon. The term Cush is often associated with Ethiopia, Sudan, and Africa in the Bible, and its literal meaning is Ethiopia, or black. Cush was also the father of Canaan and Mizraim. Mizraim is considered the ancestor of the ancient Egyptians and many North African peoples, including the Berbers. Mizrahi is considered the ancestor of the ancient Egyptians and many North African peoples, including the Berbers and the dark-skinned Tuaregs. It is fascinating to note that all Semitic peoples, such as the Aramaeans, Arabs, and Israelites, refer to Egypt as Mizrahi. This designation is used in several ancient languages, such as Aramaic, Arabic, and Hebrew. In the book of Psalms, chapter 78, verse 51, it is mentioned that he smote the firstborn in Egypt, the first fruits of manhood in the tents of Ham. Besides Mizrahi, Ham also had a son named Put or Phut. An interesting curiosity is that the name Put or Phut originates from the word that means landmark and is a reference to tribal hunters in Africa. Put is considered the father of the native black Libyans of Libya, as well as several other African peoples. Now about the famous curse of Ham concerning Canaan. Many people in antiquity misinterpreted the curse of Ham, or Canaan, described in the book of Genesis chapter 9. The text says that after Noah got drunk, his son Ham did not help him and instead told the other brothers that his father was naked and drunk in order to mock his father. But there is more than one interpretation of this text. Noah placed the curse on one of the sons of Ham, specifically on Canaan. It seems like a lot of exaggeration on Noah's part, but at the time, their relationship of respect toward the father was something almost sacred. Although Noah was apparently wrong to be drunk in this way, interpretations of these texts suggest that Noah would have gotten drunk accidentally, an act that had never been done before. He would have accidentally discovered wine and got drunk without knowing it, hence why God does not punish him. It is worth mentioning that Cam and his other 3 children, Cush, Mizrahi, and Put, are originally from African peoples. It is important to emphasize that the black peoples were not cursed, but instead Canaan, the father of the Canaanites, who inhabited the Middle East. It was he who received Noah's curse, not the African peoples. It is crucial to clarify that interpreting the biblical text as if African peoples had been cursed is a serious error and false interpretation. The curse falls on Canaan, the ancestor of the Canaanite or Canaanite peoples. We know that Cam is the ancestor of all African and South Indian peoples. Because he was born before the flood, he enjoyed a much longer lifespan, being able to witness even the 5th and 6th generation of his family and ancestry. Interestingly, just as Shem lived to be approximately 600 years old and also lived around that age or even longer, although there is no precise confirmation of how old he lived, as the biblical texts do not mention it. It is presumed that he reached the 600-year-old mark like his brother. It is not known for sure where Cam's tomb is located, but according to some theories and studies, it may be in the Ethiopian region or even in Nubia. Others claim that he is buried in Mesopotamia, in the land of the Sumerians. However, many agree that Ham's tomb is in Africa, more precisely in Sudan or Ethiopia. Some even suggest that he could be buried in Egypt, which is quite intriguing and interesting, since Egypt is a country full of mysteries, and people buried 3,000 or 4,000 years ago are constantly being discovered. The Book of Jubilees provides us with more information about Ham's old age and about events involving Noah's family and the 3 lineages: the lineage of Ham, the lineage of Shem, and the lineage of Japheth. This ancient Jewish manuscript, which was believed to be true in the time of Christ and even earlier, reports that Ham completely disapproved of his youngest son Canaan's decision to dwell in the land of Shem, which is now known as Israel. Ken did not agree with the attitude of his son Canaan to take those lands for himself. In the Book of Jubilees, it is reported that Cush and Mizrahi, brothers of Canaan, along with their father Ham, disapproved of Canaan's decision to dwell in the land of Shem, which is the region that today corresponds to Israel. Like Ham, they also showed disapproval of Canaan's attitude. They go to Canaan and order him to leave that land, as they believe that African lands were reserved for the descendants of Ham. However, Canaan disobeys and continues to dwell in that land, completely ignoring the will of his father and his brothers, Mizrahi and Cush. The Book of Jubilees relates that Ham was the founder of the first city and the first province after the flood. He named the city after his dear wife, Malay Tamlak. In the city of Malay Tamlak, Cam lays the foundation of a new world, a world shaped by the dreams of the past and the hopes of the future. Through the eyes of Cam, we glimpse at the complexities of human existence, the frailty of flesh, and the resilience of the human spirit. And in the echoes of his footsteps, we hear the whispered prayers of generations past, a testament to the enduring power of faith and humanity. As the narrative draws to a close, we are left with more questions than answers, more shadows than light. Yet, in the darkness, there is a glimmer of hope, a spark of humanity that refuses to be extinguished. And in that hope, we find redemption, a promise of a better tomorrow, forged in the crucible of history and illuminated by the light of truth.
Did you know that according to several studies, all modern humans originally came from Africa? Even white people. And this is not even a random claim. It is backed by a ton of research from some of the smartest people out there, like anthropologists, geneticists, and paleontologists. They have all looked into our past from their respective fields and arrived at the same conclusion, that humans originated in Africa. If you are wondering what kind of evidence supports this theory, stick with us for the next few minutes as we show you the proof that traces humanity back to its roots in Africa. The out of Africa theory. There is this fascinating theory that explains where we all come from. It is what scientists call the out of Africa theory. Scientists believe that all modern humans like you and me originally came from Africa. According to this theory, about 200,000 years ago, there was this single group of ancestors in Africa from whom we all descended. Over time, these early humans evolved and started spreading out. By around 100,000 to 160,000 years ago, they had made their way to the Middle East, and it was not until about 50,000 years ago that they really started settling in other parts of the world. Now you might be wondering, what about our different looks? Great question. The various physical features we see among people across the globe today did not just pop up overnight. They developed over the last 60,000 years as humans adapted to different environments. How exactly? We will get to it in a moment. For now, you should know that the Out of Africa theory is not the only one that explains the origin of humanity. After some years of suggesting the Out of Africa theory, scientists suggested the multi-regional model. This one is a bit different. It suggests that when our early human ancestors first left Africa nearly 2 million years ago, they did not just stay in one place. Instead, they spread out and set up shop across Africa, Asia, and Europe. According to this model, modern humans then evolved at the same time in these different regions, not just from a single group in Africa. And yes, these groups mingled and mixed, which helped keep their genetics similar, despite being spread out. This interbreeding meant that while they were developing distinct physical features suited to their regions, they were still part of one big human family. Recent studies have further changed this theory. Current evidence suggests that things are even more complex. These latest findings support the idea that while all modern humans did indeed come from that original African group who ventured out about 60,000 years ago, they also mixed quite a bit with the local groups they encountered. It played a major role in shaping the success and survival of our species. While all these theories are great and sound perfect, what proof do we have? That's exactly what we are going to get into next. Let's go through the evidence supporting these theories. Scientific evidence. When we want to figure out where we came from, scientists look at the bones, our ancestors, and our DNA. Old bones, or fossils, show us what our ancient family looked like and where they lived. DNA tells us how we are all connected. Both fossils and DNA are super helpful and give us strong clues about our past. First, let's look at the anthropological evidence that we gathered from the fossils of our ancestors. Anthropological evidence. A long time ago, Charles Darwin had a hunch that Africa might be the place where our species started. Back in the 1800s, though, Darwin did not have much proof because there were not many old human bones discovered yet. But then after a few hundred years, some archaeologists digging in Ethiopia found parts of human skeletons at a place called Omo Kibish. These bones were buried deep in the ground, and the archaeologists thought, wow, these must be super old. They were right. When they tested the bones back in their labs, they found out they were about 195,000 years old, which means they were the oldest human bones ever found. After that, archaeologists started looking for old human bones on other continents too. In the Middle East, they found bones that were 92,000 years old. Down in Australia, the oldest ones were between 40,000 and 60,000 years old. Over in Europe, they were about 30,000 to 40,000 years old. When you look at all these dates, it seems like the oldest human bones are in Africa, and the farther you get from Africa, the younger the bones are. This pattern makes a lot of scientists think that the first humans, or Homo sapiens, started out in Africa and then traveled to other parts of the world over time. But the problem here is that finding old bones in good shape is really tough. Maybe there are older human bones in places other than Africa, and we just have not found them yet because it is hard for bones to last a long time. Or maybe, just maybe, they are out there waiting to be discovered. Now, while we keep finding older and older bones outside of Africa, none of them are from people like us. They belong to what we call our close relatives. We call them Neanderthals, who were found in Europe, and Denisovans, who were in Asia. These are kind of like our ancient cousins. They look a bit like us, but not exactly the same. The difference between us and them is the shape and size of our skulls. These discoveries suggest that other types of humans were present in Europe and Asia long before our direct ancestors appeared on the face of Earth. So if these cousins were living outside Africa way before us, why do we still think all modern humans started in Africa? It is a big puzzle. We need something more, some kind of stronger evidence to prove the theory that humanity originated in Africa. That's when scientists started to study DNA to get the answers. Just like you can learn a lot from family photo albums, scientists can learn a lot from DNA. And did you know what they found? Let's take a look. Genetic evidence DNA is like a code inside every one of us that carries instructions on how we look and function. Over time, this code can get tiny changes called mutations. This is totally normal. These mutations are just small changes that happen randomly and keep adding up as time goes on. To study the evolution of human beings, you have to consider every change or mutation as a unique marker. Scientists can look at these markers to figure out how closely people are related to each other. For example, people from the USA have more in common, DNA-wise, with people from Canada than with people from Saudi Arabia because their markers are more similar. This shows they are more closely related, You might have heard about those DNA tests like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. They work by checking out these markers in your DNA and then matching them with different groups of people around the world to guess where your ancestors came from. Scientists do something similar for the whole human race. They compare DNA from people all over the world to create a giant family tree. Each bar represents different groups of people from various places. Each group has different color markers showing the unique DNA mutations they carry. When you see the same colors in different groups, it means they share those DNA mutations. Let's hear a super interesting thing. You see, when scientists look at this big DNA family tree, they see that no matter where you start, if you go back far enough, all the lines lead to groups from Africa. This is a big clue that tells us all humans originally came from Africa. The cool part about this tree is how it shows us not just where we came from, but how we have traveled and settled around the world over thousands of years. For example, Indians and people from Pakistan share a lot of markers. This suggests their ancestors were once the same group, living together before their lands got split by a border. And looking at our history, we know that this is what exactly happened. And both these groups have connections to North Asians, hinting that our ancient human family moved from Africa to the Middle East, and then spread out even further. Scientists also use this family tree to figure out when our very first human ancestor lived, just by understanding how often these DNA changes happen and how many generations typically pass between them. This helped them estimate when and where the first humans appeared. All of this evidence strengthened the idea that we all started out in Africa. If you are still not convinced enough, we have another piece of evidence for you. Scientists also looked at genetic diversity to reach the origin of humanity. Genetic diversity refers to the variety of genetic characteristics found within a population. Interestingly, this diversity is greatest among African populations. When scientists compare genetic markers, they find that while some markers are present outside Africa, the range and frequency of these markers are significantly reduced compared to what is found within Africa. So what does it mean? It means that humans originated in Africa. Since humans have inhabited Africa for the longest period, it has allowed for more genetic variations to develop over time. These variations have helped them adapt to different environments and challenges. Also, the areas with the least genetic variations include the groups that have migrated from Africa. It is generally believed that when humans migrated out of Africa, they did so in small groups. These groups were not fully representative of the genetic diversity found in their larger originating populations in Africa. This is because a small group naturally carries only a limited genetic snapshot of the larger group. For example, let's say a group migrates out of Africa as a series of small-scale departures over time. Each departing group will carry only a subset of the genetic diversity from the larger African population. Now, new populations will be established by a very small number of individuals, which means there will be reduced genetic variation compared to the original population. This means the group or area with the most genetic diversity will have the oldest ancestors. Right now, that area is Africa. More proof. Did you know the first language was spoken in Africa? There is this groundbreaking research led by Dr. Quentin Atkinson from the University of Auckland. He studied phonemes, which are the smallest units of sound in a language, much like letters are the smallest units in writing. His findings showed that African languages have the most phonemes. They are incredibly rich and varied compared to languages from other parts of the world. As you move further from Africa, the number of phonemes tends to decrease, with the fewest found in South America and the Pacific Islands. This pattern proves that the first language, or the mother of all modern languages, originated in Africa. Dr. Atkinson used methods similar to those used in evolutionary biology to trace back the roots of language to Africa, suggesting that all the languages spoken today evolved from a single language spoken in Africa thousands of years ago. Not just language, tools, and weapons also prove the theory that Black people are the origin of humanity. The oldest known tools were found at a site called Gona in Ethiopia. These tools date back about 2.6 million years and are simple yet incredible for their time. They are known as the Oldowan Toolkit, consisting of crudely chipped rocks. These tools clearly show early humans were thinking innovatively to meet their needs, using available resources to cut, scrape, and chop. The discovery of these tools in Africa provides solid physical evidence that our earliest technological advancements originated there. Both the linguistic and archaeological evidence support the idea that Africa is not just where humans physically evolved, but also where they began to develop the complex tools and languages that would define human civilization. This is all the evidence we need to prove that humanity originated in Africa. But there is still a piece of the puzzle that is missing. Let's say black people are the origin of humanity, then how come not everyone in the world is black? How come we have so many races and skin colors? Recent studies have answered this as well. Evolution of skin color. The way how human skin color evolved over time is truly fascinating, and it was anthropologist Nina Jablonski who gave us the explanation of it. A few years back, Nina Jablonski was preparing for a lecture at the University of Western Australia. That's when she became deeply interested in finding the reason for the evolution of skin color. She found that much of the historical research on skin color was outdated or biased, and so, along with her husband George Chaplin, she decided to form a new, comprehensive theory. Let's have a look at her theory. Humans first appeared in Africa, where the sun is very strong. Here, everyone had dark skin because dark skin has a lot of melanin that helps protect against the sun's harsh rays. This protection is important because the sun can destroy a nutrient called folate, which is important for healthy babies and good health in general. As some humans started moving away from Africa about 60,000 to 100,000 years ago, they found themselves in places with much less sunlight. In these new homes, like Northern Europe and parts of Asia, there was not enough sun for their bodies to make vitamin D, which we all know is really important for strong bones and staying healthy. When there is not enough sunlight, having lots of melanin is not as helpful because it blocks the little sunlight there is. Over thousands of years, people living in places with less sunlight evolved to have lighter skin. Lighter skin has less melanin, which means it does not protect as much against the sun, but it does a better job at letting in sunlight. This is important in places with less sun because it helps their bodies make enough vitamin D. This is how people who moved away from the equator or Africa started to develop lighter skin. The change from dark to lighter skin was a slow process. It actually happened over many generations. Generations after generations, children were born with slightly lighter skin, and those with lighter skin were healthier in areas with less sun, so they were more likely to have children of their own. This whole change shows how humans adapt to their environment. In Africa, dark skin was necessary to block out a lot of sunlight and protect nutrients. But in places with less sun, lighter skin became more useful to help make vitamin D. This is how people who moved away from the equator or Africa started to develop lighter skin. The change from dark to lighter skin was a slow process. It actually happened over many generations. Generations after generations, children were born with slightly lighter skin, and those with lighter skin were healthier in areas with less sun, so they were more likely to have children of their own. This whole change shows how humans adapt to their environment. In Africa, dark skin was necessary to block out a lot of sunlight and protect nutrients. But in places with less sun, lighter skin became more useful to help make vitamin D. This is why humans now come in many different skin colors, depending on how much sun their ancestors got where they lived. It all depends on how the body adapts to get what it needs based on where it lives. Now that you know the reason behind it, you should never forget that all humans are equally evolved, no matter what we look like. Skin color is just about where our ancestors lived and what they needed to survive there. For example, darker skin helped protect against strong sunlight in places close to the equator, while lighter skin was better for soaking up sunlight in areas with less of it. These changes were just nature's way of helping people live better in their environments. Really, when you get down to it, all of us are incredibly alike. We share 99.9% of our DNA with each other, no matter where we come from. That shows that the idea of race, based on how we look, does not have much to do with our biology. It is more about how people think and categorize things. Understanding this can help us feel more connected. We are all part of one big human family, no matter our skin color or where we come from. Africa to America. Now we know for a fact that history started in Africa, right where the first humans made their home. This connection to Africa is a big part of understanding African American heritage today. The way African roots have spread to America is a dark chapter in history. This story began when millions of Africans were forced from their homes into the Americas during the transatlantic slave trade, starting in the 16th century. Even in those harsh times, Africans brought a strong cultural spirit with them. They influenced American culture deeply, from the beats of jazz and blues music to the spiritual songs that expressed their deepest hopes and dreams. Other than that, African Americans have been pioneers in science and technology too. For example, Garrett Morgan, who came up with the traffic light, or Dr. Mae Jemison, the first African American woman astronaut. Their achievements are huge, not just for African Americans, but for everyone, showing how far we have come from those early, tough days. So it is important that we celebrate African heritage. It gives all of us a sense of who we are and pride in where we come from. But to truly celebrate, we need to understand the rich history behind it. So if you want to know how Black culture has shaped the world, make sure to watch our next video. You will be amazed at what you learn.